Welcome to the life of a global Desi.
A podcast that connects like-minded Desis all over the globe by conforming to stereotypes and breaking them.
Introducing Desi versus Globe. As Desis, when we travel, live, and work abroad, we often experience a whole new reality, contrary to the one that we're used to. Let's deep dive into these differences across various aspects of life. We explore topics like driving, weddings, education in a Desi versus Globe context.
And also topics like shopping, sports, money, and much more. The idea is not to say that one way of living is better or worse, right or wrong, but the attempt is to understand the underlying historical context, socio-economic structures, government policy, and cultural nuances that lead to such varied results overall, and ultimately, what can we learn from both contexts? So stay curious
And keep listening. On to our episode now. Hey everyone, this is Archana recording from Michigan, United States.
And this is Aarti recording from Medellin, Colombia. And welcome to yet another episode of Life of a Global Desi. In today's episode of Desi vs. Globe, let's talk about essential work around the house, daily household chores that we need for survival. You know, like roti, kapda, makaan. These are fundamentally different experiences in India and in abroad. At least for me, they were. So as the whole world is cooped up at home due to the lockdown and the mandatory quarantine thanks to coronavirus, which means we are spending a lot more time indoors, the idea of household chores just becomes that much more important, I guess.
Absolutely.
As a result, yeah, we have put like a magnifying glass on all these tasks that now need to be done around the house to run a home.
Yes, we've realized all this about household chores, as Aarti said, because we are spending a majority of our time at home. And a very interesting phenomena that we see playing out on social media these days is something that we've all seen on our feeds, right? Social media is ripe with updates about everyone doing household chores. Cooking has obviously become humble brag. I'm baking bread or I'm doing the dishes. And I actually saw one one update about rants of not really having a maid or household house help in their building, which is quite shocking, but also understandable given just how it is when people think about house help. And
Yeah, or even like the internet meme that has gone like crazy viral, right?
yeah,
Like, I don't know if any of you have seen the K3G tune internet meme when the guy is coming back home after the quarantine ending and the it's like a bachelor pad boy who runs out to greet her out of joy. So yeah,
100%.
it's similar feelings.
Yeah, and you also see a lot of celebrities suddenly posting videos about, oh, look at me doing the dishes, or look at me doing jhadu pocha, which is obviously bizarre, but also, if you think about it, these are mostly people who've never done a single chore in their life, right? And so, for some of us, this suddenly feels like a sense of accomplishment doing any single chore, right? Cooking, cleaning, doing the
Like a
dishes.
unique experience.
For sure, this is a unique experience, and because
Novelty.
that's what we try sharing on social media, right? Oh, look at me doing this or experiencing something
For the first time.
different and something for the first time. Yeah, exactly. If you think about it, all of these household chores, right? Cooking, cleaning, doing the dishes, making your bed, are often performed miraculously by people who we take completely for granted. Are almost, and people who are almost invisible to us, and the work that they do is invisible. Namely, our mothers, maybe grandmothers, wives, husbands in some case, obviously, but house help, maids, laundryman, dhobi, etc. And
I just noticed that was the first time you mentioned like the masculine gender, the laundryman or the dhobi, and
that's true.
everyone else on that list were all female. So yeah, something else that says about our society in general outlook about who does these, um, you know, ungrateful tasks that and labors of love
A
mostly
hundred
in
percent.
most
A hundred
cultures.
percent,
Yeah.
right? And this is not just in a certain society, but this is world over. This is an observation, obviously. And none of these tasks, these so-called like essential have to be done tasks, are considered productive from an economic standpoint. No one's getting paid to do this, and economists often classify this as labor of love. This is not something, you don't get paid for putting food on the table. You don't get paid for doing the dishes. You don't get paid. Like, these are just things you have to do to live a life, right? And this really goes to prove how neglected household chores really can be, at least the people who do it, and how little we think about it, especially when it's just done automatically, right? So we want to bring attention to this aspect of our life, and both in India and outside of India. So it'll be interesting to see
Yes.
what the contrast of both of that is, right?
Contrast.
And since for a lot of us who may have lived in both places, but also just lived in one place, and really want to learn about, hey, curious about what it might be like outside of where you live.
And so, India, I feel like the main difference in household chores in India is that most people in the middle class of India can afford house help. And I don't know if that's a more recent phenomena, but that is definitely the case in India.
Yep. But when you think about the global north or other developed nations, particularly the United States, Europe, obviously Australia, New Zealand, you more often than not are doing your household chores on your own. In a capitalistic economy, productivity is key. So being productive as a human obviously means that a lot of these menial tasks, I mean, menial in quotes, obviously, but also just these unproductive tasks are mechanized, right? So you often have a machine doing a lot of these household chores, right? So that you can focus your intellect elsewhere. So things are a lot more mechanized or automated, and the human labor is more expensive. So you can't often hire household help or house help like in India.
And not just in India, even in countries like Colombia, like where I am right now, Brazil, Singapore, like I've heard stories from friends there, and like quite a few other Asian countries or developing economies have a culture of hiring house helps because it's relatively affordable, but it also helps the economy. I guess trickle down, if you believe in that myth, is that's how it plays out.
Yeah, because society, at least, from an economic standpoint and a capitalistic society, you almost want people specialized in their tasks, right? So it's almost, if you have the skill to do a certain job, you continue to keep doing that job, which is, equivalent to, I mean, the work that you do is equivalent to the productivity that you have. So I think societies benefit from that, and economies benefit from that level of specialization.
So speaking of household chores, this brings us to like what kind of household chores are actually outsourced in countries that I was referring to. I guess we can broadly classify it into food, clothes, and home upkeep, which in Hindi translates to roti, kapda, or
A very
makaan,
popular
right?
saying in India, right? Or I think it's a Bollywood phrase for
Yes, if
sure.
you're a big, it's Bollywood man, it's Amitabh Bachchan.
Yeah, roti kapda or
But
makaan.
yeah, but now when we talk about roti here or food, I guess we mean okay, what happens in Indian households when it comes around food? In most Indian families, moms are usually the ones who do all the cooking. Who then that's why maa ke haath ka bana khana, which is mom the food made by mom's hand, which is unparalleled and tastes nothing else like anything else in the
Compares.
world. But a close second, especially for bachelor pads in India, is Didi ke haath ka bana khana, which is the house help. And most young bachelors have house helps who help around with not just cooking but also all other motherly tasks that need to get done around the house, like pampering them, taking care of the laundry, cleaning the house, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I guess Aarti is saying house
Um,
helps. I don't know why she's saying that, because there's multiple people, right? It's not just one, but obviously that's incorrect, Aarti.
Sometimes.
Yeah, okay.
No, what? There are.
Whatever.
Come on.
Double income families.
I said house help.
What about people, like, what about full-fledged families, right? Folks, say like both husband and wife are
Yeah, well,
working. I suppose that's also a
I,
lot of,
I feel like it depends in younger
like,
couples, like
urban
where
couples.
both yeah, urban couples with double income families, both the husband and wife are working. You have full time cooks for all three meals, and you have house help for like nanny tasks and chores and other things like that as well. So they're pretty much like full time in
And
house
very
help.
specialized tasks, right? You might
And
have one cook
yep,
to like do the chopping, the other one to like mix all the food or
yes.
make the rotis, which is so interesting.
Just make just the rotis. And yeah, it's so interesting how in India you can hire people for very specific tasks. Like
Absolutely.
you can hire two or three different house helps, for someone for just doing the cleaning, and someone else for just doing the cutting, and someone else for just doing the watering of the plants. Because I've seen that
Oh,
happen
and the
in our
dusting.
at our places where and the dusting. Yes, of course, dusting. And it's so interesting, like in India, like it's a necessity, it's an everyday necessity to do these things. But sticking to the food aspect of it, most young people living in India depend on either curry points, which are like affordable places that give you like handmade homemade curries and things like that, and often the house help helps with rotis, or sometimes even that's bought. But even and eating in India is still like quite affordable. So you can afford to eat out every day almost at curry points.
Yeah.
Of course, this does not apply to all middle class. Some, especially bachelors or young people, those working in corporates, are the most spoiled when it comes to this, because they get almost two or all three of their meals in their company
Yeah. And
where
there's
they
like a
work.
variety
So, and
of
that's like
a big spread, right? They can literally choose from any
big
cuisine in the
spread.
world, which is insane.
So yeah, so like these bachelors probably would prefer to eat out over the weekend, but like during the week, it's not like they don't have house help. They do hire house help, but it's not for cooking.
So yeah, I think like you mentioned, affordability of the services is one of the biggest factors why you can outsource a lot of the food making, a lot of the aspects around food. I think the biggest shift someone makes in mindset and adjustment that they have to make to is when they move outside of India. So I'm definitely going to share my experience around that and what I've seen in that aspect. So how do you keep yourself alive, right? It's the food. So as soon as you move out of India, that's the biggest worry of anyone who's moving outside. So families back home, particularly your mothers or grandmothers, are absolutely fretting about you being able to feed yourself because they don't have any faith in your abilities to do so because they've literally never seen you make a full
Yes.
meal, right?
Absolutely. That was like my case till very recently also. Like even though I have lived abroad, like this time around when I was coming, half my suitcase was literally just Indian masalas. And then my grandma, until very recently, I didn't have a cooker. And like every call with her would involve her worrying about, did you get a cooker yet? Did you find a cooker yet? And like
Because Indian food is
because
cooker
most countries don't use cookers, and like you need a pressure cooker, the
to
pressure
cook
cooker, not the
everything.
electric one, the pressure cooker to cook so many things. So yeah, I totally relate to that.
Yeah, and young adults here, if you, typically as a student, if you're coming here, you start cooking for the first time when you move outside of home because that's just how it is, which is we'll dive into why that is obviously. But students who live with roommates maybe typically are enthusiastic about learning how to cook or starting to cook your first meal, and also depends a lot on what other nationality your roommate is and if they're experimental about Indian food and vice versa. So you start seeing students cooking a little bit. But I also know a lot of younger couples here, friends who eat out pretty regularly. That's a very common thing, almost 3 to 4 times a week, because cooking after a long day's work can be quite a pain. And if there's no one at home really making you that hot and delicious meal like your mom or your grandmom, you're pretty much like, I'm just gonna order in or take out. And lunch is usually an eat from a food truck sort of gig or your standard tech company gig, like you mentioned, even in India, right? What started off with Google providing free food is now table stakes across all tech companies. So it's almost like you will accept the job offer if you know the company has great food. And when it comes to nuclear families, most Indian families with kids will cook at home because I think by that time you want to start leading a very healthy lifestyle. You also want to be good at good with your money because obviously, let's admit it, eating out is expensive and not the healthiest choice. But we've also noticed some families, who again are double income and both partners are working, You have maybe a cook that comes on a very per hour basis in the US who can come and cook and make a few dishes for you a couple of times a week. You can also get rotis from the nearest Indian store, or this cook usually also cooks rotis. Else you can obviously invest, like I said, going back to the mechanized and automatic aspect of a developed nation. You can also invest a couple of $1,000 and buy the rotimatic, which is obviously
I've
designed.
actually seen this.
Yeah, and so for
Yeah.
those of you who've not seen it, which I think must be very few people, this is a machine, a massive, like, microwave style sized machine, which was invented and designed by an Indian in Singapore because they missed rotis from home. So you literally put in the atta, water, and everything, and it spits out rotis, which is incredible. They're pretty decent. Like, we've eaten those
Like on its own. I think
on
it's
its own.
pretty
I
cool.
think it's fantastic.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of
For sure.
invention,
Yeah, some
they
of our
say.
friends in Silicon Valley have this and swear by it, which is great. Now,
Yes.
with food, the other thing that comes is washing the dishes, right? Doing the dishes. Like, how are you going to do that? So, in the US, obviously, doing dishes is, most houses have a dishwasher. I don't think I've seen a single house without a dishwasher because I think this is pretty standard fare in the US.
But I do feel like most Indians like wash their own dishes by hand.
Yeah, because at that
Still.
point it's almost like, because you've just grown up with the mentality of, wait, if I have to rinse the dishes and load the dishwasher, like, might as well just wash the dish,
Wash the
like,
dish.
because
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly my
which
point.
is crazy. Like, but obviously if you have like too many dishes and you have four people in the house, it's better to just use the dishwasher at the end of
Yeah,
the
it's
day,
better to use a
right?
dishwasher. But like in India though, like I don't remember ever having done dishes except for like when the maid wouldn't come home. Like we all would make it a fun game to like do the dishes as kids.
Yeah.
But the first time I ever had to do dishes was definitely after coming coming to live abroad. The first time I did was also like coming to Colombia, first time around in 2013. So that was a long time ago. But I had to do dishes because everyone in the house took turns to do the dishes,
Yeah.
and I did too. So
Yeah, because in India, you pretty
yeah.
much take it for granted, right? You just keep piling up dishes in the sink, saying that, oh, there is a person whose job it is at the end of the day or beginning of the next day to do all the dishes, including a single spoon, which now you think is bizarre because you're just like, have to wash
Yes.
everything because, now you're judicious about like how you use your dishes, so you minimize everything.
So that's the roti piece of it.
Yep.
Let's move on to clothes we wear,
Which
right?
is
Which is
kapda.
kapda. So in India, we have dhobi wala bhaiya, or the person who comes home once a week, usually on a bicycle with a
I'm
bag,
sure now it's
and the bag's
motorcycle.
actually not like a bag. Yeah, actually now it's upgraded to motorcycle, but like my early
Of
memories are like
course.
a cycle, and like they come with this bag which is like a bed sheet. It's not a bag; it's a sheet bedspread that they use to make a little
Potli.
travel
Like a
portly.
sack.
Yes,
Yeah.
I couldn't find a English word for that. Just yeah, a
So
sack.
innovative.
And then they fill it with clothes. It's like a Santa on bicycle. It's
The
like
sack of dirty clothes.
pretty much with a sack of dirty clothes, and it comes back with folded clothes by the end of the week, which is just like wow.
Amazing. Yeah.
And they pretty much paid like on per item, like number of clothings, and it's like dirt cheap. It's like every article of clothing costs just a few cents to iron. Or like so Dhobi Bhaiya Bhaiya takes the clothes like that, but we also have another Bhaiya for ironing. And this person pretty much takes like washed clothes in a big fluffed up back sack and like brings it back completely ironed.
That's true.
And an entire week's clothing, ironing clothes takes about a little over $1 or $2, which is like super affordable, right? And we need ironing more than like washing, because washing now in India has been taken over by the washing machine revolution,
Yeah.
where everyone in the middle class owns either a semi-automatic or an automatic washing machine, right? So what needs to be outsourced more is ironing clothes in India, because we wear a lot of cotton clothes in India because of the weather, and that definitely requires ironing, and I miss that from living abroad,
I know.
which is a totally different case, right?
100%. I miss the crisp cotton clothes that come back ironed, and you're just like, wow, this is a miracle.
No, but what I miss is like not having to iron synthetic clothes in while abroad, because all our formals are usually just wash and wear.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which is 100% the case with me because my least favorite job of this clothes kapda part is ironing them, and I that's I mean, I will do anything. I will wash dishes, I will clean bathrooms, I will do whatever, but I hate ironing clothes. So I have almost exclusively stopped wearing natural fibers, which is 100% cotton or silk clothes because in the US, because it's such a bummer because all my clothes are artificial fiber now, which is horrible for the environment and obviously not sustainable. But I'm far too lazy and choose convenience over being a conscious consumer about fabrics, which is sad. Um, but I also have a capsule wardrobe, which means, it's all like under 40 to 50 items, which really takes away all the decisioning and ironing, most importantly, and washing. So, like you mentioned, in the US, obviously, most cities. So, if you're obviously living in a big city like New York or Boston or downtown, right? Homes are smaller, apartments are smaller, so you may not have maybe an in-building washing machine, washer or dryer. You may not have an in-unit washer or dryer, which is pretty common in bigger suburban areas or apartment complexes. You have something called laundromats, right? Public laundromats where you
Yeah.
literally take all your clothes in a sack like the dhobi bhaiya. In this case, you're the Santa, and then you walk up to the closest laundromat and wash your clothes and then dry your clothes. And we've all like seen this
Yeah.
in Friends, right? And that laundromat episode where
Random Matter episode. You know, the first time I had to
yeah.
do it, this was after coming to the US. In my hostel, I was living at the hostel on campus, and the ground floor was the basement was the laundromat. And this tiny anecdote, I didn't know like which one was the washer and which one was the dryer,
Very
and I ended up putting
understandable.
soap in the dryer.
Dude, that sucks. I'm sure the
And
person who
then I
came
had to
next to you
call
was
the
like cursing you.
No, I freaked out because I realized that this one, which is like circular and vertical, does not do the
Yeah, and that's
drying.
totally
Wait,
understandable. Like
hold.
now we're laughing about it, but dude, it's genuinely confusing.
I
Like the
was so
first time, if
confused.
someone
Yeah.
doesn't
And I told
walk
the
you through
resident
it,
advisor,
yeah.
and then she was like, "Oh, that's okay." And she was very nice about it because I'm
Oh,
like an international student and I'm like fresh off the boat. And I'm
yeah.
like, how does this technology piece of technology work? And I was feeling so bad that I ruined it. But yeah.
Yeah, but something similar happened to me. I obviously didn't put detergent in the dryer. I don't know, obviously, but like, I luckily didn't do that. But I put all my clothes in high heat, and all of them became 2 sizes smaller. And I was like, dude,
Ooh.
this is
Yeah,
really
that's
sad. But
yeah.
yeah, that
But of
happens,
course,
right?
in winters, I love the high heat because I love after the laundry comes back, putting them on the bed and then rolling
Yeah,
in them.
for sure. And this whole concept of roll press in India, right, which is a thing for saris, because a lot of Indian women wear saris,
Yeah.
right? And it's a massive like 6 yard piece of cloth, cotton usually or silk or whatever, and you need that. But in the US, it's impossible because like our grandmother who lives here, she doesn't wear any of these like cotton or silk saris anymore in the US because it's a pain. Who's going to sit and iron it? So she also switched to like
Yeah,
synthetics and
versus sending it out
yeah,
for road press.
absolutely. And so I
Absolutely.
don't know what women do here if they don't. I'm sure there is some Indian roll press person.
Thinking about like just household chores, right? I think the biggest one out of them all is keeping the house clean.
Yep.
The makaan aspect of
Yeah, you can
it.
figure out food, you can figure out clothes, but how do you keep the house clean?
You have to do it. Yes, exactly. And so if you're middle class or upper middle class, you most probably have house help to do the house cleaning. And in our house though, like dusting is something that we still do ourselves, which is
Really?
I don't know why. It's just something.
I think
Yeah,
dad does it.
mom says. No, mom
Mom
does
does
it.
it. Okay.
Dad does the ironing.
Yeah, which I find
Dad
very
has this.
bizarre. Like, why is there so much of dust? Like, you will dust it this in the morning, and by evening there's again a film of dust, which is amazing. Like, where is all this dust coming from?
Yeah, you could clean the house twice and still not have the house clean. I think it's just something about the
Indian
air. I'm
air.
not sure. Like, in depends on where you live in the city as well, right? I feel like the army cantonment's still a lot greener, so a little less dustier. But like main city areas, is like a lot more pollution, a lot more dust. It's just
Yeah. And a lot
part
of
of it, I
construction.
guess.
India is like being built, right? So there's a lot of construction everywhere. So I guess cement and dust.
So like we do have like house help for like everything from sweeping and mopping the floor. The amount that the house help gets paid totally depends on the number of tasks that they'll be doing on monthly basis. Sometimes it's like just for mopping this much, just for
Oh, yeah. Like
cleaning
I said, like going back to the
additional this
specialized
much.
tasks, right?
So for cleaning the house, traditionally like we use a broom and a cloth in India, and although the maid is like our maid right now has graduated to like a stick mop or like a broom recently, thank God for that. because otherwise real cleaning like is backbreaking work. You're bent over like all the time and it's like doing squats, right? And weirdly enough, even though we've had a vacuum cleaner in our house, we have barely ever used it. We must have used it, we sometimes use it like once in a year to like express clean the windows and things like that with the jet function. But otherwise we have never used a vacuum cleaner in the house, like unless it is, for some specialized task that only
Yeah,
the
and I
vacuum cleaner
remember
can do,
this
like
was
cleaning the carpet or
some
something.
random door-to-door sales guy had sold us this vacuum cleaner some like I don't know 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And like you said, because we take it for granted that there is a maid who comes and does this back-breaking cleaning every day, every single day, sometimes twice a day, we just don't use the vacuum cleaner, unfortunately. It's very weird. But in the US and other developed nations, vacuuming is definitely the way to go. Not by choice, but just that's just how you do it because there's really no one who's coming and cleaning your house for you on a daily basis, at least. You vacuum at least a couple of times a month, depending on how dirty your house gets, if it's carpeted versus if you have wooden floors. Also, vacuuming is my second favorite, no, second least favorite job. So I try to find other people who can do this for me, like Aarti or Nikhil. And also depends on what
Yes, I
vacuum cleaner
used to
you
be
have.
the
I mean, if it's like one of
vacuumer.
those super powerful Dyson vacuum cleaners, I'll probably give it a shot, but the normal ones I don't. And for the mop in the US and other developed nations, you have this brand called Swiffler, which is literally like a stick mop. And I remember at one point, one of us at home had seen this on like the HSN, TVC, teleshopping commercials. They're like, we need to get that because that cleans everything. But like lately, for once or twice a month, you can also get a cleaning lady or a cleaning service to
Yeah.
come and do a deep clean of your bathrooms and kitchen, and even vacuuming if you want. But as you can imagine, this is a pretty expensive affair. You need to usually pay them by the hour. Prices obviously vary across the different cities, regions in the US. Like, for example, Boston, New York, San Francisco probably are run anywhere from like $100, $100 for a couple of hours to other cities, which might be cheaper. So if you think about it, it's like you're paying that much money to a maid for a whole month, right, in India. So that's crazy. The other thing is, when you think about your home, obviously, but then another place that you need cleaning is your car. In the US, like I said, most things are mechanized. You have automatic car washers. Once or twice a month, you can, depending on how OCD you are about keeping a clean car, you can do that. It's super fun sitting in the
Yeah, and in
car.
India we have them like every
Oh,
day
yeah,
because we have a car
car
cleaning
cleaning
bhaiya come
person
every day
who
in the
comes
morning
early in
and
the
clean the
morning to
car.
dust
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
The other thing I found really bizarre in developed nations and obviously the US that I saw was seasonal housework, right? So in fall, you're raking a lot of leaves. In the winter, you're clearing the snow from your driveway. In spring, you're, doing gardening or cleaning or summer yard work. Um, a lot of people do this themselves, especially you get a really good
Yeah.
workout for this, but you can also, I suppose, hire help to do all of these things, which again
Yeah,
can
and
add up.
I'm thinking about like the ways in which the COVID has affected all those people who work in the service and in the blue collar labor market. Just
Yep.
in that sector, in
It,
that segment.
absolutely.
And I think about like the house help I have here in Colombia, and I absolutely miss our house help, who is this very lovely lady who shares like tales about her teenage daughter every time she comes home while cleaning, and we have like small chats like that. And every week she used to make my bed in a different way by folding the sheets differently or laying out the pillows in different patterns. And that was like the most exciting thing for me to like come back to my room to see it spick and span. And every time I thank her to say that, oh, this is so beautiful, or like this is so well done and I love how you do it, every time she always used to say, lo hice con mucho amor, which is I did it with a lot of love. And I really miss that.
Yeah.
And
While
thinking
in the
about
meantime,
just
I'm
how,
making my own bed. Thanks for sharing that, Aarti. With no
no, even I'm making my
specialized
own
bed
bed is
folding.
what I'm telling you.
Oh, poor
Oh
you.
yeah, oh, you're saying, yeah, now I don't, but yeah, you kind
It's
of
not a
make it all
big
the
deal. You
time.
can
That
make
makes
your own
sense.
bed, please.
I do make my own bed now. And no, but I'm just saying, like, it's a very it's a stark contrast that I see with India, where in India I feel like work is very segregated, and there's also like deep rooted casteism that is ingrained, right? Like here I can be like really good friends with our house help, and even in our house back home in India, like we are pretty close to them when it comes to festivals or like giving them gifts on festivals and things like that. But you can see in very subtle ways how casteism still is a very in the fact that most house helps in most households ha- enter the house from the back door and not from the front door. They have a
I mean,
different
if you
set
have a
of
back door.
utensils. If you have a back door, yeah, that's true.
Not in
But like
apartments.
they not in apartments, but they also use like different utensils to eat and drink from,
Which is bizarre.
uh, which is bizarre. Like yeah, and it's just centuries and centuries of just deep rooted, deep seated casteism and beliefs that even after so many years of reform, we have not been able to overcome, and there's still apathy for menial labor in Indian society. And as a society, we do not embrace dignity of labor in the same way. Even if we do, it does not go beyond like chai pani ka paisa for the parking lot guy, like who's actually giving you parking tickets or not.
Yeah. Or like
And
teaching the maids' kids something, right? I mean, maybe English, or like helping them with some schoolwork if their kids are like with them while they're working and
yeah, but
literally
even
doing a
that's
job.
very different and like detached, right? Like very
Yeah.
few households have I seen the house help be actual family members, be treated like actual family members, and that's
Yep.
very rare in India. There
Yep.
is a very stark difference between what role they play in the household and otherwise. And then this very deep rooted casteism also flows into the way kids in India are often mollycoddled, and thanks to the army of invisible hands that do all the work, from making their bed as soon as they wake up in the morning to bring them a glass of water and so on, right? And starts from a very young age that they are conditioned to be that way and behave that way.
Yep. Absolutely. But in contrast, when you think about young adults who grow up outside of India, kids at a very young age learn how to participate in household chores, right? The fact that dignity of labor is a very known concept. It is a very inherent concept where you're doing your own work. It is not looked down upon. In order to be an individual, an independent individual, you need to learn how to survive. That includes cooking food, doing your own laundry, and keeping your surroundings clean. And in most
Yeah, these are
cases,
like life
kids,
skills.
yeah, these are life skills. These are not skills that are unproductive or not, you don't get paid for it. So why should I know it? These are, like you
Absolutely.
said, life skills to be able to lead a good life, right? And in most cases, kids earn their pocket money by doing chores around the house, which really makes them extremely independent from a very young age. And these are just um, important skills, like we discussed, to have in life. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I've definitely noticed in terms of contrast of how household chores are treated in India versus outside of India. And hopefully during this time of lockdown, when each and every one of us is at home and we've put a magnifying glass to these household chores, every individual in the family, right? Man, woman, child, young, old, no matter who you are, has a newfound respect for household chores and really understands the hours and hours of labor that goes into setting up a hot, delicious meal. Having well laundered clothes ready for you at the end of your at the edge of your bed, right, to wear, and keeping your living spaces clean and hygienic, be it in India or outside of it. And I think that's what we're all experiencing and seeing on social media play out as well.
Yeah, and that's what this episode was about, guys. Share your experience with us about household chores in India or outside of India. If you agree, disagree, or would like to add something or confirm with what we just shared.
Absolutely. And as always, stay curious and keep listening. And
Peace out.
hey, Desis, if you enjoyed this episode, then please rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening to podcasts.
And drop us a note on lifeofaglobalDesi@gmail.com or our social media to keep up this awesome dialogue.
Oh, and don't forget to give us a 5-star rating.
You're so cheap. Why are you asking them for 5-star ratings?
Well, I always ask for the rating I want, not the one I have. You know, like dress for the job you want, not the one you have.
That's like the stupidest thing I've heard all day.
Arti, you're so judgmental. You
Well,
need to stop being
listen,
judgmental.
I just think you can't be so demanding. That's all.
You ask for what you want.
Blah.